Hey guys, welcome to this week's show. The guy I'm interviewing this week, his name is Dan Schmalz. He's known as the Archives Guy. He has a podcast called the Archives Guy Podcast, and it's all about the city of Cambridge. He gives you a little bit of a rundown on the history of Cambridge. It's really, really cool. Anyway, I just wanted to give you this introduction because we kind of jump right into conversation. Dan and I kind of know the same people, some of the same people, and knew some of my family members. I knew a couple of his family members. So just wanted to give you this intro before we start the show, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi, my name's Walter Montero. I'm a real estate and mortgage agent here in Cambridge, Ontario, and I've had the privilege of serving our community since 1987. Over the years, I've met some great people here in our community in many different businesses and walks of life. Some, of course, are well known, and others are some of the best kept secrets in town. So the purpose of this podcast is to share and introduce them to you. Welcome to the I Love Cambridge podcast. Yeah, very good, very good.
First day of vacation, so
excellent, very good. So Schmalz is your last name. Are all the Schmaltzes in Cambridge related?
In some way or another, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the ones I remember, there was one in real estate years ago.
Oh yeah.
And then the small fry people.
Small fry is my uncle.
Oh, very good.
My uncle Jerry. Yeah, we're all over the place.
Okay, very good.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong. Was Frank your brother?
Frank was my brother. Yes.
I knew Frank quite well at the city. And
very good.
Yeah. So I do work at the city. So.
That's your day job.
That's the day job, yeah.
Okay,
so
very good.
And then Frank knew my dad from the police force and all that. So every time I'd pass him in the hallways, he'd always be yelling Schmaltzy and all that, just like he did with my dad, right? And I always knew like Frank was around because I always hear him call me like that. So yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Small world, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been in Cambridge since '66. I mean, nice. Obviously your roots are a little deeper, I think.
Yeah, not as deep as you think. Like my dad's side, yeah. But my mom was born in Belgium, so.
Oh, no kidding!
She came here when she was about a year and a half in 1956. So.
Oh wow!
I'm technically a first generation Canadian. So.
Yes. Yeah. We came over in '66.
Nice.
So yeah.
Those are really interesting stories, and that like doing the so. To give you a little bit of background information, like I do run the city archives.
Okay.
That's where the whole idea of the Archives Guy comes from.
Yep.
It's
so what the name of your podcast is? Archives Guy.
The Archives Guy podcast. That's it.
Got it. Okay.
You can thank former city manager Gary Dyke for the name.
Oh, Gary. Okay. Yeah.
He called me Archives Guy at the Christmas party one year because he didn't know my name.
Oh yes,
and I kind of just ran with it as like a joke, and I'm like, when I started deciding to do this, I'm like Archives Guy. Just made sense.
But then you ran him out of town. You ran him back to Prince Edward County.
Oh no, that was his choice. So it's it's definitely been a whirlwind of change since he left, though. Holy.
Yeah,
moly,
sure.
Right. So it's just been wild. So the one thing I will point out though with this is that the podcast has absolutely nothing to do with the city.
Okay.
And it's my personal.
That's your own deal.
It's my personal project. That's why I was a little hesitant to do this at first. Yeah. Because there's some concerns at work that people get it confused and all that, but I make it clear in advance that it's nothing, as long as I stick to the history, right?
Sure.
And I'm not I don't talk much about the archives at all. It's there. Like I wish I could talk about it. I wish I could make this an official thing and all that, but it's a labor of love project. So
sure, absolutely. Well, you can tell. I mean, I was listening to a couple of your episodes. You definitely have some passion.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a massive amateur in the world of podcasting. I'm just kind of learning as I go. I never a year ago, if you would have told me, hey, this is what I'd be doing, I would have thought you're crazy. Mind you, a year ago, anything going on nowadays, people would think you're crazy.
Isn't that? That's.
But sure. Like, I that was part of the thing. It was like when I was sitting at home, I'm like, I need something to do, right? Like, just started to share my love of local history. So,
yeah. Well, it's really cool, because when you're listening to your show, I mean, anybody that's has any kind of interest in knowing a little bit more about Cambridge. I get a real kick out of just hearing all the names, the references.
Because I get a lot of people don't know that, right? Like I always like think to like especially with Hespler, right? Like
Yes.
Hespler people are like, so like, oh, I'm from Hespler. I'm so proud of being from Hespler. I'm like, okay, tell me who Jacob Hespler was. Right?
Okay.
How many of them can do that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it's not a high. I don't think it's a high percentage, but it's cool. Like when you can give the people like, okay, yeah, like you're from Hespler, but like, do you know like who he was? And like, but do you also know that like he also had a huge influence on the early history of Preston? That I don't think a lot of people know that, right?
And he owned some land in Galt.
And he did, yeah. I found so the one there's an 1867 map that a bunch of different places. You can find it. Cafe 13 has a copy. Archives has it as well, and it has the names of like the people who own the different lands. And then you see over, I think it's closer to the bus station now, is that you see Jacob's name, and that like he was everywhere. Like he just, I meant in the episode, I even argue, I'm like, I think he was the most influential out of all the guys who helped develop the area. Right? Yeah, like he had his fingers in everything.
So even more than John Galt?
John Galt had virtually nothing to do with the history of Galt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a friend in schoolmate of William Dixon, the founder of Galt. Dixon, they wanted, so it was called Shades Mills, right?
Yeah.
It was never an official name. It was just because of Absalom Shade, who was Dixon's agent, who was really the guy who did a lot of the grunt work in getting the settlement going. They called it that, but when they wanted to give it an official name and get a post office, Dixon decided, okay, I want to change the name, so I'm going to call it Galt. So he invited John Galt to come visit, and he visited here once, and that was it. And he got a town named after him. Yet he was, and he was more known for founding Guelph and Goderich, right? But yet the town that bears his name, because he was part of the Canada Company, right? And they were responsible for like getting Guelph started in Goderich, and like he had a huge role in that. But the town that bears his name, he literally visited once, and that was it.
Isn't that something?
These are the stories, right? This is exactly why I do it, right? Yeah, like I always like, I love just talking about this stuff. Like it's amazing seeing like people, like I love the response, right? Like people are just like, wow, I didn't know that. And that, or like you look like on social media, like anytime you see there's like a whole bunch of these like local history groups, like someone posts a picture and it's like, oh, I remember when my grandfather or my grandmother did this, and that. Or remember when I used to go here and when it was this, and it's so true. Every picture like tells a story, right? And tells multiple stories for different people.
Yeah. Well, right? You know what I found very interesting is when you're hearing these names, all the streets that you know, because all these streets are named after these founding fathers. And
yeah, exactly, right. And even some of them, like interesting thing is like with like, I'm going to go hardcore history nerd on you here, but like Dixon Park, Dixon School, it's not named for William Dixon Sr. It's named for his son, because his son took over for his father took over his father's business after his father retired to Niagara on the Lake, and he gave the land to the city for Dixon Park under the condition that it always remain a park.
Oh yes.
So like, but that's where that comes from. Like you got like Ainsley Street is from Adam Ainsley. They all the different parts, they all had their Queen Streets, their King Streets, and that, right? Like Park Hill was Queen Street. Queenston Road in Preston was Queen Street. Part of what is now Water Street in Galt was King. They all, like all the different names, they all have like there's so many like that have taken the names of the people who helped set up the community, right? So
yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's interesting stuff for sure. So what how did you get involved with obviously the archives or the
yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of a rundown on that, how that happened. I kind of fell into it, and like it's like they say, like you never end up actually planning to do something, you just fall into it. Like, so I was a late bloomer. I didn't start at the archives until I was in my 30s. I worked for 12 years at the Food Basics downtown Galt. And really enjoyed it for a long time, and eventually like it was getting harder on the body and that. And I wanted to kind of do more with myself and challenge myself more. So I decided to go back to school, and went to Western part-time 1 day a week while I worked full-time. And that summer, I'm like, I don't want to work at the grocery store for the summer. I want to try something different. So I applied for every city, regional, inside, outside job you could think of. Archives was the only one that called back. And I got an interview there, and I was definitely older than most of the people who were applying for jobs like that. And I think that's why like I fit in so well. I always have to give her a shout out. Lynn Greggs, who I worked with in the archives for like a number of years, like she took a flyer on me, and she figured like, you know what, this kid is not a kid. He's 29 years old or 30 years old, and he's not going to goof around or anything like that. He's going to work. So did that, and then I came back the following summer, and they said he had a records management job available. So I applied for that, and I was a really good fit with the team there, and then they decided to keep me, and here I am 8 years later. So
wow, good for you.
Yeah, so my job is not like that. There's a little bit of confusion that people think like I just do archives, but my main responsibility is corporate records management and freedom of information, and I run the archives on the side of that. So
I see.
But that's my real passion is the archives. It's a lot funner than going through making sure that the building department's keeping all their records in order, or finance is destroying stuff when they're supposed to destroy it and stuff like that. Having someone come in and ask me about the history of their house is a lot funner. So
yeah. Now, what's the tie-in with let's say LACAC?
Oh, the old well, today they're called MHAC, right?
Okay.
The Heritage Committee.
Yep.
And that, so they that's the one of the legislated committees that the city has for obviously squarely heritage matters, but the archives itself doesn't have much of a role with them. We don't really interact that a lot on things. If they need information on different topics, they'll contact me.
I see.
So
what's let me ask you, what's something that you know about, either Galt, Preston, or Hespler that nobody would even think of?
Oh wow, put me on the spot. Let me think here. Oh god, not a lot of people would know. Like I said, I got mentioned to you earlier about Jacob Hespler being hugely influential in the earlier history of Preston.
So tell us a little bit about this guy.
So Jacob was born in Germany, in the Baden-Württemberg area, coincidentally very close to where my family's from.
Oh, very good.
My family's from a town called Fisher, back near the Black Forest, very tiny. Jacob was from a place called Einigen. He was born in about 1811, and he came over here, and originally, so he's educated in France. He was actually descended from Hungarian nobility. So he ended up being educated in France, and he came here and he worked in the fur trade for the Hudson Bay Company, but also he worked under John Jacob Astor in the States, who at the time was the richest man in America.
Oh, okay.
So after that, he decided to settle in Preston. So he got a little bit of land there and started to make a life for himself. And he was a very shrewd businessman. If you know the stone building right beside where Giant Tiger and all that is, old school people will remember. Yeah, old school people will remember the old Low by GA. Yep. That big stone building that's there, that was actually built by Jacob in about 1845 or so, I believe.
Okay.
So that was one of the first thing. Yeah, he was trying to compete with the Herbs. So the Herbs were the founding family of Preston, and if you know the P&H milling, or we call it the old Dover flour mill, that was the site of the Herb mill where Preston began. And that, another interesting fact, is the oldest continuing operating business in Waterloo region is that.
Oh, wow.
Since 1805, 1806, when the original mill was built. So Jacob built his on the other side, tried competing with the Herbs. Wasn't having a whole lot of luck. And then he ended up buying some land further up the Speed River in a place that was called New Hope at the time. And then if you look, there's the dam in Hespler on by Guelph Ave there. He started by rebuilding that. And then once he did that, everything changed for New Hope. It went from a sleepy little hamlet to like a thriving community. Like he built his mills, a distillery, like what else did he do? Like grist mill, sawmill, woolen mill, all kinds of stuff. Like
pretty successful guy.
There's no one more deserving of having a town named after him around here than Jacob. Like New Hope was already a settlement, so you can't really call him the founder of the settlement. But without Jacob, there is no Hespler, and not just the name. Like it's just he built everything there, and it's awesome that you see that his woolen mill complex is being reused today as like a little condo development. It's still there, that direct connection to Jacob. And there's a lot more information on that if you want to listen to the podcast. The one episode.
That's your latest episode, right?
Latest episode is Jacob Hespler. I am trying to get myself going again, and working on the next one which is about the history of Preston itself. I'm flirting with the idea of doing a video podcast. I just need to figure out what I'm doing. So I'm going to use the Christmas break to practice with a camera and not make a total fool of myself. Cause like anybody, I don't like being on camera. I don't like listening to myself, but I find like when I get going on this stuff, it's a lot easier because I'm enjoying what I'm talking about. Like if this was like something like not archives related or like something that I would do at work to do with training staff or something like that, then it'd be like I'd be a little more anxious or whatnot. But yeah, looking to do that. I'm looking at doing like how do you do family research? A lot of people, it's really popular, like with Ancestry and all that, and I give people some tips and all that from my experience. Like I give them a little bit of a background behind like how I did my own family history and ended up retracing my family's steps in Europe. About 4 years ago, I trekked across Europe for 2 weeks, tracing where my mom and dad's family came from, and
very cool.
used some of the tricks that I had learned over the years on how to research your family history. So yeah, like that's kind of like that's the next. And then just gonna keep I have about, and this is just a rough, like I did this in about 5 minutes, about 40 episode topics lined up. The one good thing about local history is there's no shortage of information. Like I could literally be doing this for years, and that's the hope. So, and I'm always open to suggestions from people and that if they want to, like, oh, I want to, like, what about this building, or like what about this topic, right? Like, just clued into another topic that I want to do. I have a little bias to Preston. I'm sorry to anybody who's Galton Hespler. I'm a Preston boy. But I do try to balance. So I try to not do consecutive episodes about one. I try to rotate each one. But another one I want to do is on the Preston Rivulets, the famous women's hockey team from the 1930s.
Oh, yes.
And that probably my favorite local history story. And I'm going to do an episode on them. Just an amazing story, not just for female athletes, but just for local history and Canadians in general. Like it's just such an amazing tale. So
where did they actually have an arena when they played?
Yep, the old Lowther Street Arena, a corner of Lowther and Moore is where it stood. It's actually an apartment complex now, but that's where the ladies played, and they were just absolutely dominant. Don't want to go into too many details. Don't want to spoil the episode, but
sure, no,
you'll be blown away about how good they were, led by two sisters, the Ransicum sisters, Hilda and Nellie. Sorry, almost forgot her name. Hilda was so good that she was probably the best female hockey player of the first half of the 20th century.
So before her time. Definitely
way before her time. Anyone who's I've talked to who ever met her, it was just, she was so far ahead of her time, and like it's just a wonderful, it's an amazing story. I can't get enough of that. Like just love like telling the tale. So that would be a future episode as well. So lots to come, and I'm always willing to take suggestions. So
good. What can you tell us about the Preston Springs?
It's one of the buildings that I've seen the most amount of historical information on. I don't think I've seen more historical pictures of any other building in town than that.
Is it haunted?
The old haunted tales. I've had a few of those asking me, like, I've never seen anything concrete. Like, I'm not a non-believer or anything. I'm definitely open-minded. I believe in aliens for sure.
Yeah.
Ghost stories and all that. Like, it's an old building. It's not being used. It sounds creaky when you walk in, like the hallways and all of that. Like, obviously people are going to be like, oh, it's definitely haunted then, right? Like, I've never like heard anything concrete, but like, you know what? I'm no expert. So
sure. So what do you think? Do you think they should preserve it or should it go?
No comment. Not going to go there. I wish I could. I just, with the way my situation is better that I don't have.
Sure, absolutely. Now let me ask you. Speaking of haunted, there was always talk about a ghost at the old post office downtown as well.
Yep. That is the most famous ghost story in the history of Cambridge.
What's her name?
Oh.
I know she's got a name.
Emily. Sorry, I almost forgot her.
What is it? Emily?
Emily, yes.
Emily, yes.
The Post Up Master's mistress.
Oh, okay.
I do cover that story in the third episode of the podcast.
Oh, very good.
I did ghost stories and true crime tales.
Oh, very good. Excellent.
So we talk about the history of the old post office ghost story and all that. And it's the most famous ghost story I've ever heard of in Cambridge. And definitely, if you want to learn more, check it out.
Awesome. Very good.
Just plugging myself nonstop here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what about the Shade Street Arena?
The Galt Arena, the oldest continuing operating arena in North America. People in Boston area will disagree with us, but theirs had a fire and stopped operating for a little bit. So, the Galt Arena. So 2021/2022 will be the 100th anniversary. And I was hoping like we were going to be able to do something big. Guess depended on the pandemic situation, who knows what will happen, but we can always celebrate the 100th on the 102nd anniversary or something like that.
Yeah.
Retroactively. Yeah. Like it has so much. Like I got a chance to go in there a few months ago. I hadn't been in there since I was a little kid, and it's got that old barn vibe. Like if any of you have ever went back and like I'm dating myself a little bit here, but like back to like the old Montreal Forum, Boston Garden, or Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yeah,
I leave Gardens there because I'm a Habs fan. But put them third. But yeah, like the old arenas like that, right, where you're so much closer to the action, and that like Galt Arena is built in that model, right? It's had a lot of famous players come through. Gordie Howe came through there. Contrary to popular belief, he did not play regular season games there. He trained there due to they had a rule back then that you could only have a certain amount of Western imports. And so Gordie wasn't allowed to actually play in the regular season games. He just practiced with them. And I think he played a few exhibition games. But he also went to GCI briefly and worked at the old Goldie and McCullough factory as well. So got that little connection there, right? And then you have people like Terry Sawchuk played for the old Galt Red Wings. I believe we had I think Howie Meeker played, I think when they were the Blackhawks. You had players like obviously Kirk Maltby, the Red Wings. Let's see, Todd Harvey. Who else am I? I'm sure I'm forgetting. Brian Little, the more recent one. And there's been just a steady flow of like really solid professional hockey players to come out of this area. And that's something to be like, or just to have come through and have trained here, right? Like they may not necessarily be from here, but like they did train or play here. So that building has so much history. When the pandemic subsides and all that, if you ever get a chance, like you got to check it out. They have some really cool exhibits inside. And then you can just see the arena, right?
Yeah, I know the building quite well, actually. I grew up about 3 blocks away from there on Pollock Avenue. So, yeah. So I used to go to the Hornets games quite regularly. And I had an uncle that was actually a gold judge there for
nice.
Yeah.
Like we have such a rich hockey history. So like it's another like topic that I'd like to do. You can talk about the Hornets, the Rivulets in Preston, the Shamrocks in Hespler, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the Hespler hockey stick that plant that like Wayne Gretzky used Hespler hockey sticks, right? Like it's pretty cool. Like the rich tradition that we have here, like just as any other community in Canada, like it's in our blood, right? So
yeah, it was certainly a tough town to grow up in if you didn't know how to play hockey.
Yeah. I definitely I just it's Canada's game, right? So
yeah, that's for sure. Well, that's awesome. Your show's very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're 5 episodes in now, are you?
Yeah, almost. I'm gonna just try not to relax too much. I got to get to work on episode 6, probably starting tomorrow. I got just a rough outline of it done, and that. And usually, once I get going, it's good. And then when I record, it's like one and done. I don't like hearing myself do these.
Yeah,
I've never actually listened to much of it myself. I just record it and then make sure that I'm not getting cut off anywhere, and then publish. So like it's through you can get it through Apple Podcasts if you use there, Spotify, or I think you can just Google the Archives Guy podcast.
You're right at the top.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you look on Spotify and you see something that you did. Like I don't know if you've seen that with yours, right? Like it's like wow, I'm a big shot now, right? Like I never thought I'd see that. Like something you think it's like professional podcasts or like the musicians you listen to growing up or whatnot, get all the stuff on there, but then you see something that you did on there, and it's like that's pretty cool. So it's on there, and then eventually I'm going to look at doing some video.
Very good.
As soon as I get more confident. So
well, just do it. Don't worry about it. You're doing a great job.
That's what I'm trying to do. Like I just dove right in. Like I was like, okay, well, like let's see, what do you need? You need a microphone, you need a computer, like a half decent computer, something to record, like our software to record to, and then go from there. Like it's spend a fair chunk of change of my own money, but it's a labor of love, right? It's like, and I'm sure it's like the same for you. Like we love this town, and we want to share like the stories of like the past in my case, and with you, like just like the amazing things that are going on today, right? Like there's so many cool things that people just don't get a chance to see, right? And it's a great opportunity to promote our city and like our past as well as our present and our future, right? And I just love being a part of that. So
yeah, I always get a kick out of especially when we have people move in from out of town, and you check in with them 2-3 months later or whatever, and then they start to get sort of a feel of the the spirit of the city,
and they have to get over the Galt Preston Hespler thing.
They never heard it. What is this Galt Preston and Hespler? What is this?
I try to tell them it's like if you're in Toronto and you grew up like in Scarborough or something like that. And I always say to them like, it's 45 years later. And the rivalry remains. Like it was not like it was a forced amalgamation, and I was born after amalgamation, but I still say I'm from Preston. Right? Like it's how you tell like where something is. Like, oh, you want to know where that is in town? Oh, it's in Galt, or it's in Preston, or it's in Hespler. It's how you tell where stuff is, right? Like, and there's a little bit of pride as to what part of the city you came from.
Sure, absolutely.
Like, and we all have our little differences and all that, but we always like, you asked like one thing that can unite them all. It's like, there's a little rivalry with Kitchener, like it unites the three of them. Is like, well, like we'll be friends now, but like we all don't like Kitchener, right? So it's like the rivalry there, and that's one thing that unites Cambridge.
Yeah, no, right? That's awesome. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
well, that's great, Dan. Well, I really appreciate you being part of the show here. I think your show's awesome. I think you got some deals, and hopefully we'll give you a little bit of exposure here as well.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing more of what you guys are doing as well.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you.